Mr. Hobbs, can you explain what you're talking about this afternoon?
Well, Graham, thanks for inviting me here to speak to you today. I'm going to be talking about where the next trillion barrels are going to come from and what kind of innovation it's going to take to develop those barrels and who's going to pay for that innovation, because it's not going to come cheap.
And where is the next trillion barrels going to come from? Which geographical areas, for example?
Well, let's break it down into a manageable problem, because in fact 650 billion of those trillion barrels are already either in production, they're under development, or we know exactly where they are already in big lumps. So we're not talking about as big a challenge as it might sound at first glance. If we then look at where those are going to come from, it'll come from oil sands developments, heavy oil in Canada and in Venezuela, and maybe elsewhere. It'll come from the Atlantic Basin, the deep water areas there. It'll come from actually resources that we know about in the Middle East, but just haven't had a market to develop them.
Are there huge technological problems to exploit these trillion barrels?
Well, if you think about the industry over the last 150 years, and we are only just past the 150th anniversary of the modern oil industry, what you see is that the technical problems have increased every year, but the industry has always stepped up to the plate. So Colonel Drake drilled to 67 feet, which was a technological feat in its day. Today we're drilling to 30,000 and beyond. So it's really in relative terms. When people say the easy oil's already been found and produced, yeah, but it wasn't easy oil when we found it and when we produced it.
Is much of the oil still to be produced controversial, like shale oil?
Well, shale oil is probably a separate category in the sense that it's always been tomorrow's oil. The price has never been high enough to justify it, which tells you there's an awful lot of other oil that's available at much lower cost. But in due course, what we've got to remember is that oil prices are very low against the cost of substituting for oil, against the alternatives. And so unless we see prices rise to a level that stimulates those, then we'll just keep developing more and more expensive resources and growing to meet the demand that's available at that price.
So do you see an optimistic future for the oil and gas industry?
Well, I think the oil and gas industry isn't about to go away in a hurry. It's a very long lead time business. Investing in substitutes for oil is a very long lead time business. So it's certainly going to see me out through my career.